Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. We are so excited. Just about a week after Miss America this year, and I am here with our client, Stephanie Finoti, the current Miss Ohio, who just placed top 5 at Miss America. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. So excited to chat today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, like we said, it's been about a week. Why don't you kind of dive in and tell us just a little bit of background about you and then just your overall thoughts about Miss America and how awesome it was for you?
Whew. So, a little background about me is my parents are immigrants from Brazil. So, I'm a first generation American. And when my mom immigrated to Brazil a year before I was born August 23rd. So, it was around, when Miss America used to be in September. And when my mom was in the hospital having me, she had a lot of complications. So, she was there a couple weeks after I was born. And she remembers turning the TV on and watching Miss America in the hospital and thinking, oh my gosh, I just had a baby girl and she's a first generation American. How cool would it be if she became Miss America or if she competed for Miss America? And so when I was 4 years old, I entered my very first pageant, which was just a little festival pageant in my hometown of Whitehall. There were like 8 girls competing. It was so small and it didn't take you to state or nationals. It was just you got to represent your community for a year and that was it. But I ended up winning my very first pageant at 4 years old. And I loved it because it came with a year of service, and I got to help out with community events like the Easter egg hunts and breakfast with Santa Claus and the Halloween walk. And I just fell in love with doing all that. I was always such a social person, a social child. So being in a position where I got to interact with members of my community at all these events was something that I immediately fell in love with. And so I went on to continue competing in these festival pageants. There were 4 different divisions. So I did Little Miss Whitehall, Young Miss, Junior Miss, and then Miss Whitehall when I was 17 years old. And so throughout this time, I had been my community service initiative. It wasn't really required, but you were required to do community service, was volunteering at my local library. And so I was actually the youngest volunteen, is what they used to call it. But I started when I was 10 years old because I had such a passion for community service and I wanted to get into my community and I wanted to help others as soon as I could, as much as I could. And the library really helped me out because they taught me and my family how to speak English. Portuguese is actually my first language. And so when I became a volunteer at 10 years old, I started teaching kids how to read. And
Mm.
so, the importance of literacy was so important to me at a young age, but so apparent at how literacy is the foundation of any education. So, no matter what I wanted to be, I had to learn how to read first, and I had to be very good at it. I had to learn how to read and how to write. And so, growing up, as I got older, I started to fall in love with science and medicine, and I decided I wanted to pursue a career in medicine. And when I was in college, I realized, well, actually, before college, while I was applying, I became more aware of the barriers that were in my journey and my path, but also in my community that were present in pursuing a higher education. And so I come from a very low income community, and so we just didn't have the resources to help support students going towards a higher education, and especially not in the STEM field. We didn't have AP classes like other schools did. We didn't even have a chemistry class actually. So the first time I ever took chemistry was in college.
Mm.
And to be a STEM major, I had to take 4 different chemistry courses. And so that was a really hard gap that I had to bridge myself.
Yeah.
And so I had to really go out of my way to find mentors outside of my community. And one of the things that really helped me is that I got an internship to do cancer research at the age of 16 years old. And so I got to, one, do hands on research, hands on science stuff, and really learn what it was to be a scientist or to be a doctor by being in the field and actually having that experience. But I also gained so many mentors and the physicians that I was working with, and even the undergrads that I was working with. And that's what really helped me pursue a higher education.
Yeah.
And so once I got to college, I realized that when I met other students that were in my learning community that were also first generation Americans, first generation college students, they had faced the same barriers that I had faced, but they didn't have the support that I had because of just that internship that I got. And so I realized that if I really wanted to give back, because I had gained so much from that experience, I felt like I had to give back, and not just by becoming a scientist, but by helping other kids, become leaders in medicine or in STEM. So I decided to start my own nonprofit organization called That STEM Girl. And it started off as just like a social media campaign where I would post, different ways to apply to scholarships, different careers in STEM and medicine, and, some like study tips. And it grew into me partnering with large hospitals and organizations and STEM professionals, all the way up to this year as Miss Ohio, partnering with the American Heart Association for their STEM Goes Red campaign. And so overall, I think that my journey into pageantry started off with pageantry, honestly, but it really grew into my love for community service and wanting to give back, and having that platform in pageantry, whether it was in my small town festival pageants or as Miss Ohio or even on the Miss America stage. That platform just gave me the space to use my voice and advocate for this important cause, and to really be a leader and empower young women that are looking up to me. And so I started my work very lightly, but it definitely grew as I became Miss Ohio. And I started competing for Miss Ohio last year. So this was my second year competing. And last year I was actually a direct entry. I decided I was going to compete 3 months before the Miss Ohio competition, simply because I met a girl at my campus. We were in a workout class together, and she said she was competing for Miss Ohio. And I was like, how can I do that? She's like, yeah, I guess you could be a direct entry. So I just jumped right into it. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. Surprisingly, I ended up placing top 10 my very first year, and I didn't even understand the organization. So after that, I was convinced that I was in love with the organization. I loved the program. I loved all the friendships that I gained out of it, and how much it pushed me to become better in so many different aspects of life.
Mm.
So once I was done competing my first year, I made it my mission to truly understand the organization, and to understand how I could possibly represent them. What could I bring to the table?
Mm.
And how would being Miss Ohio benefit me, in my personal life and in my career? And so thinking about all those things between my first time competing and my second time competing, I think is what really changed the game for me, because I was able to find my why. And once I had that why, I was going for the crown, and I wasn't going to let anything get in my way.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I want to take a step back before we talk about Miss America. I literally was typing like 3 or 4 questions because you have so much to offer. And one
Mhm.
thing, just to kind of break the fourth wall for listeners, like, do you guys sense Stephanie's conviction? Like, I could literally get emotional and cry right now. I might just cry on this podcast. I
We
know
get
I'm just
emotional
so
a lot, me and you, when we
I know
talk.
I'm just so proud of you. But I
Thank
just think
you.
about how, like, you could have let not competing in this pageant system your entire life get to you. Or I think people come into the Miss America organization or Miss USA or whatever that's so big, and sometimes they're like, well, but I came from this, or I've never had representation of somebody who's one that looked like me or came from a background like me, and they let it defeat them. And it's so sad, because the world needs your voice, and to see
Yeah.
that, like, God put you on this pedestal of now getting top 5 to be able to share, even if it didn't end up in winning Miss America, but still, like, you've been able to be that representation and a light in the darkness, and just hope for people to, like, take big swings and do big things. Like, I want you to know how proud of you I am, because,
Thank
like,
you.
it's making a lasting impact. And I believe you're the first Miss Ohio too, right? Of your background and everything as well.
Yes,
So,
I'm actually the first like Latina Miss Ohio in general.
yeah.
So I am Brazilian American. So, going in, I thought that I would be the first Brazilian Miss Ohio, but looking at the history of Miss Ohio's, I realized that there had never been a Latina, and that was even more drive for me to compete. But I also want to comment on something you said, and you said, going into a space when you haven't been represented and someone that's won the title. I actually, in between my first year and my second year, I had a couple people tell me that I didn't fit the look of the Miss America program and
Mm,
that I fit the look of more, Miss USA, because Miss USA goes into Miss Universe. So they have a whole bunch of different types of women competing of all different nationalities and ethnicities.
mhm,
But they told me that I didn't fit the Miss America look because Miss America has more of a girl next door kind of look.
mhm,
And when I really delved into the history of Miss America, I came across Nina Davulori. I think I said her
mhm,
name right. And I think it was her onstage question answer, a quote that really stood out to me is she said, Miss America has always been the girl next door, but as our nation is evolving and becoming more diverse, the girl next door looks just as much as like me as she does as you. And
Amen.
so that really struck me. And I was like, I need to take what someone said and use it as fuel because they're coming from a place of, recognizing that there's a lack of representation. And I, instead of running away from that and saying, I don't fit in here because no one like me has been in these spaces, I decided to take that and say, I'm going to be a trailblazer and I'm going to create this path for other women to follow me and fill this space up with people that look like us or people that haven't been represented before in this
Mm.
organization.
Amen. Amen. One thing I want to comment on from here is you and I'll never forget when we had our first conversation. You were
Mhm.
telling me of how you and your mom hustled your whole life. You were sweeping and mopping floors after your dance classes to pay for your very expensive dance classes and all these different things that you did to I mean, just be a person of grit and intention, obviously going after what you want, but maybe for encouragement for the audience, like if they find themselves in a tough situation or they find themselves saying, well, pageants are so expensive, there's no way that I could ever do that. What would your encouragement, advice, practical as well as just mental and spiritual encouragement for people who may see that as a barrier? How did you navigate that? How did you still pave your way prosperous, even though those were, some very real barriers that you and other people might face?
Yeah, I will definitely say that I faced a lot of barriers in my life, and the biggest one was always a financial barrier. My family we survived by living under the poverty line. So my dad was the only one in the household that could work. My mom didn't get her nursing license transferred from Brazil, so she
Mm,
was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad, even though he was the only one in my family working, he could only work a minimum wage job simply because of his visa and restrictions that there were of him getting certain careers or even obtaining a higher education.
mm,
And so, something that my parents really ingrained in me is the mentality of even though those barriers are there, you have a choice on your mindset. So you can either see these barriers and get into a victim mentality and say, "Oh, I can't do all this stuff because life is so hard for me, and so I'm not even going to try." I can see all these barriers in my path. I'm not even going to try. I don't have the strength. But my parents said the opposite. They said, you see these barriers and you have the choice to say, okay, how can I be a problem solver? And how can I navigate around these barriers and create my own path? Because I'm not going to let them get in the way of my destiny or my future or of me reaching my goals and my dreams.
mm,
And so, I think when I was younger, the time it was the most apparent was I was doing ice skating and I was doing ballet. And it came to a point where my parents couldn't afford for me to do both. So they made me choose.
mm,
And I was like, I really love ice skating, but I don't think that I could live without dance. So I'm going to choose dance. And in choosing that, I had to really commit myself to just be the best dancer that I could be because I recognized that because my parents were making me choose, they couldn't really afford both and they couldn't really even afford dance. And so
mm,
I was like, I'm going to really commit myself. I'm going to work hard every single day to make this worth it for my parents because I see the work that they're putting into paying for these dance lessons and I see the sacrifices they're making. I'm not going to let that go to waste.
yeah.
And then a couple years after that, I ended up switching dance studios. And the new dance studio I went to was a lot better. They were a lot more focused on just ballet rather than all different types of dance, which was my passion. And so I, really wanted to go to this new dance school. I wanted to get that very classical training in ballet, but it was a lot more expensive. And so my mom pulled me aside and she said, Stephanie, this is the plan. You're going to go in and you're going to audition And after you show her your skills and your technique, we're going to have a conversation with her because we cannot afford this, but we're
Mm,
going to see if she's going to allow us to work there to afford the tuition. Are you willing to put in the work? And I said, Mom, I'm willing to put in the work. I want this, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get this training.
mm,
And so we went in with a plan and we did exactly that. I auditioned. The teacher said, she has a spot here. This is how much it costs. And we had a conversation with her. We were very transparent and we
mm,
said, we can't afford this. And honestly, we can't afford anything, but we're willing to work hard. So whatever you need, do you need a seamstress? Do you need someone to clean studios? Whatever you need. And so we ended up getting really close with she was the owner of the dance studio, but she was also one of the teachers. And
mm,
so we got really close with her. And my mom ended up, that was her job, is she kind of did whatever was needed in the studio. She was a seamstress some days. She was the, office lady other days. And other days we were staying after dance classes to clean the studios.
mm,
And then when I got a little bit older, I started this when I was around 10. And so when I got a little bit older, I started teaching private lessons to little girls. I started teaching ballet classes. And all of this, while I knew that I was different because none of the other girls were doing that, everyone just came to class and they left, and I was staying after hours cleaning studios or coming in early to teach classes, it didn't really strike me as anything that was wrong because to me, I was like, while my mom is staying after hours cleaning studios, I have the opportunity to rehearse after hours. And so I was like, this is kind of cool. This is kind of beneficial. While other girls are coming in at 3 o'clock, I get to come in at 2 o'clock to teach little kids how to dance. Like, this is so cool. So I always had a very positive mindset when it came to these barriers in my life. I always knew that in the hard work that I was putting in to overcome these barriers, it was strengthening my character and it was strengthening my grit. And I always recognize that because my mom is the most, like, she's the strongest woman that I know, and she's faced even more barriers than I have in my life. So I said, if my mom can overcome these barriers and come out stronger, I know that this will be beneficial for me in the end. And so never let it get to me or really shift my mindset. And I think that's the biggest advice that I can give young women that are going into pageantry that think that, they for some reason are less than the other girls that they're competing with, if that's because their wardrobe is significantly cheaper than other girls, or if they didn't have, as many coaches, or they didn't, I don't know, some barrier that was in their way that made them think that they were less than or less prepared than the other girls in the room. Just know that pageantry is a space for you to bring your most genuine and authentic self. And that has nothing to do with the price of your wardrobe. It has nothing to do with if you got the world renowned ballet teacher to choreograph your talent, or if you took your voice lessons at the National Opera House. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you put the work in on yourself. It's about working on yourself and bringing your most authentic and genuine person into the interview room and onto the stage. Because at the end of the day, that's what inspires others, not the price of your wardrobe. I could care less how much your wardrobe was. I want to know what you have to say, and I want you to share your story with me.
yeah.
And so for me, my first year competing, all of my wardrobe was either made or borrowed. I borrowed my evening gown from a girl that I had met 2 days before the competition because my evening gown I had gotten from a thrift store and it was way too short for me.
Mm,
And she was like, no, 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 no. Come to my house. I have evening gowns. I used to compete in the Miss Kentucky program. And she let me borrow her evening gown. And it wasn't hemmed, it was a little bit too long and whatever, but I loved it because it was given to me out of love. And when
mm,
I wore it on stage, I knew that I wasn't just wearing a dress, I was wearing a gift from a friend.
come on.
And my second year competing, I did buy my own evening gown, but it was very affordable because I knew that I had a budget, but I also wanted to spread a message that you can win with an affordable gown. My
Hmm.
gowns have always been less than $500, and I think that simplicity is elegant. I think it's beautiful, and I think that there's so much more for you to say and such a bigger message for you to send on stage than how expensive your wardrobe was.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, spending $10,000, $12,000 on a dress, like I was on a call with somebody a month ago that really wanted to work with us. And we get to the end of the call and they're like, wow, we wish we would have talked with you a week earlier because we just spent $12,000 on a custom dress. And I'm like, well, I hate to tell you, that's not going to make you win. Like it might, it
Hmm.
might, but it's not the thing
Yeah.
that makes you win. And I see it as such a distraction sometimes. Again, it's like, it's the wrong energy. It's like, will this validate me? Will this validate me? Will this make me feel like I
Yeah.
deserve to be? I'm like, this has to come from you. Like you have to be convicted that you're gonna make there be a place for you here. They are gonna like your message. They are gonna like a girl with brown curly hair because I say so. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
if you can't be confident in your own skin and in your own two shoes, like then we have no business, first of all, asking a judge to give us the crown and the sash because we're not even convicted, you know?
Yes,
So
I
all these
agree.
other things, like I think are such a distraction. And, great. If you have the budget, like buy a beautiful gown, buy a fully beaded gown, like whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But when people only take an outside in approach, it's going to fail them. And then actually what I was just talking with Miss America about right before this was just our passion for, now that she's on the other side of things, Maddie, we were both just chatting about like how important identity is in general, because even if you do win the crown, that's not going to validate you as a person. Just like getting married doesn't make you happy, right? Like you need to find that
Mhm.
wholeness. And so something that I just think was so attractive to the judges about you this year that clearly worked was, again, how unapologetic you are. And so do you have any advice for people that are somewhere along the journey of pageantry, whether it's local, state, nationals? And what was kind of your approach of just putting both of your feet down and effortlessly and really unapologetically just being like, here's who I am and take it or leave it, but I'm gonna have a blast. And I think what my favorite part of Miss America for you was your fitness walk, because you were just so like vibing. I could just tell you were just like, this is
Having too
this
much
is my
fun.
time. This is my hair. I'm gonna give you a little hair flip, like, and it made I was crying literally at the TV. I was so my sister's taking a video of me literally crying. But yeah, what would be your advice to people? And then how did you come about, getting there even in your own identity and your own walk?
Yeah. Oh, I started laughing when you said that because I honestly, I think I've been like this all my life. And I think a lot of it is because of my mom. My mom is someone that I have truly just admired my entire life. And I know a lot of people say that about their mom, and as you should, right? Our moms are our greatest blessings. But my mom immigrated, left her entire family, came to another country, and faced so much discrimination. She almost died in childbirth facing discrimination because she couldn't speak English well enough. And instead of taking that victim mentality, like I was talking about before, she recognized that that was a very large barrier that she was going to face here in America. And she knew that, if she was going to raise a daughter and she was going to do it well, she had to advocate for her daughter. And if she couldn't even advocate for herself in a healthcare setting, how would she advocate for me? So she made it her mission to not only learn English, but excel in English. And she not only wanted to speak it, but she wanted to learn the proper grammar, have a good vocabulary, be able to write essays and write them well so she could help me with my homework. And why I'm saying all of this is because while she was doing all this, she was facing so much discrimination, and people were constantly making fun of her accent, telling her that she was saying words wrong, telling her that she didn't, have a place in certain spaces. Like one of her biggest, I think, setbacks was when she wasn't able to transfer her nursing license from Brazil to America. And that was kind of like someone telling you in your face, you might have been good enough in your home country, but you're not good enough here. And that was always her passion. But instead of taking that and letting it take her down, she never let that set her back. She knew inside that she is a great nurse. She knows that she has a very well-rounded like education, nursing education, and she is a great nurse, and she knows that one day she will transfer her license and she will be a working nurse in America because that's always been her dream. And so for me, seeing her face all those setbacks, especially her not getting her nursing license transferred, I was always like, Mom, why are you still studying nursing? You're not going to be a nurse. They already told you that you can't transfer your license. She said, Stephanie, that's today, that's not tomorrow. She said, I will never let someone else tell me who I am or what I can and can't do. And you can't allow them to tell you that either. Another one that was very apparent is my mom has always worn her curly hair. She's always flaunted it, and she doesn't wear any makeup. She just wears her curls. Some days she styles it, some days she doesn't. And I go, Mom, you're going to go out the house like that? You're not wearing any makeup. Your hair's messy. She goes, this is who I am. Why do I have to hide who I am for other people? So she has always been so unapologetically herself, and seeing her be so comfortable in her own skin that she doesn't feel like she has to put a face on to leave the house or to be anyone other than who she is really taught me to be that way growing up. And so it came in like, when I was dancing and everyone, all of my colleagues, all of my friends knew that I was staying after classes to clean studios. I never apologized for that. I never was embarrassed about that because I knew that that's what I had to do to take dance classes. And so why am I going to apologize for it? If anything, I'm working a little harder than anyone else is. you know, Wearing my curly hair. I had a period of time when I went to college that I felt like I had to straighten my hair to look pretty. And it was kind of like one of those things where you straighten your hair and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you look so different. You should straighten your hair all the time. And I was like, well, I want people to like me, so let me straighten my hair. I straightened my hair every day for a year. And one day I was like, let me wear it curly. And my hair didn't curl. And I was like, okay, I have now just lost a very big piece of myself that I've had my whole life, a piece of my identity. I've always been the girl with curly hair. And I lost that because I wanted to conform to other people's expectations. And so I chopped my hair and let it grow back healthy. And I decided not to ever straighten my hair again because I wasn't going to change who I was to fit other people's expectations. And so, in saying all of that, I had the exact same approach going into pageantry. I heard from so many people that, they're looking for a certain person. They're looking for a specific type of person to represent the organization. And from a lot of people, I heard, you don't know what they're looking for, so you can't become who they're looking for. You don't even know what they're looking for, right? So I was like, well, if I don't know what they're looking for, how do I know they're not looking for me? So why am I not going to approach this like I've approached everything else in my life, unapologetically, myself, 100% authentic and genuine in every phase of competition, interview, my fitness walk, my evening gown walk, my talent. In every single one of those phases of competition, I inserted a little bit of Stephanie to show my personality on and off the stage. And I thought, if I'm going to go into this and I want the title, two things could happen. Either I could go in and be myself, and that's not who they're looking for, and they don't choose to crown me, and that's okay. Because I walk away knowing that I gave it my all and I was completely authentically Stephanie. Or I could go in 100% myself, and that's exactly who they want. And I get to be crowned being the most authentic and genuine version of myself. And that's what happened my second year competing at Miss Ohio. I came in with a completely different approach. I was like, I want everything to scream Stephanie. My wardrobe, my fitness walk, the way that I talked in interview. I wanted everything to be so Stephanie oriented that the judges know exactly who I am, exactly what I bring to the table. And if I win, I get to win being completely myself. And I think that is the biggest reward. And so, even going to Miss America, placing top 5, I know that everything that I did, I was so authentically Stephanie in every phase of competition. My fitness walk, me and my friends laugh at this video because for the prelims, we did the group dance. And then Ohio was the first to go and do the fitness walk. And as I'm walking back to my spot from the fitness dance, I was clapping my hands. And I was like, nobody else did that. And I don't even know why I did that. But the truth is, I was having so much fun on stage, and that's something that I would do. I would go and clap my hands on the way to my fitness walk because I want to show the audience how much fun I'm having.
Mhm.
And if that's something the judges hated, then that's okay because I loved it and I had fun doing it. But if that's something that allows me to stand out because I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and show people exactly who I am,
Yeah.
then that's an even better takeaway.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you should never fit yourself into a box to conform to other people's expectations, whether that's in life, in pageantry, in your career. There's always going to be a little box that they expect you to fit into. Even becoming a scientist, they were like, okay, well, if you want to be a scientist, you can't wear makeup, you can't, you know, try to look nice every day because people aren't going to take you seriously.
Mm.
And I was like, well, that's something that I like to do. I like to do my hair. I like to wear cute outfits and I do pageants. So, I'm a very feminine girl. I'm not going to lose that just because I want to be a scientist and I want to be taken seriously. People should take me seriously because of what my mind has to offer, not because of what I look like. And so I have always made the decision to not fit into that box, because when you try to squeeze yourself into that box, you have to lose pieces of yourself.
Yeah.
There's not a one size fits all box that fits every single person exactly the way that you are. You have to lose pieces of yourself if you want to conform to expectations that society has or other people have for you. And me personally, I'm not willing to sacrifice that. I'm not willing to sacrifice any part of myself to fit into someone else's expectations. And I think that is something that makes me strong, and something that I hope I can use to empower other women to also be completely comfortable in their own skin and approach every situation 100% authentically and 100% genuinely, and not allow themselves to conform into other people's boxes or expectations.
Amen. So good. So good. Oh, I could talk to you all day. This is so good. Okay. Two more questions. So, number one, let's talk about Miss America Week. And then
Mhm.
I want to talk about like what's next for you and how are you going to
Okay,
continue to expound upon and just the rest of your as Miss Ohio too. We still have half a year left, which is
perfect.
great.
Yes.
So, Miss America, how did it go? What were your favorite parts? Maybe give us the highlights, everything from being in Orlando to friendships to actually competing, just anything that you would really like to discuss and let people
Okay.
know. Obviously, it went great for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Miss America Week was honestly the best week of my life. And I have dreamed about this week since I was 4 years old, like I said earlier. But sometimes you dream of things, but you don't know exactly how they're going to go, right? You can't force your expectations to become your reality. You have to be a little bit open minded going into these situations. There are things you cannot control. But I knew that I could control my experience, because controlling your experience means controlling your mindset and controlling, how you feel going into the week, and not letting anything that happens, anything that deters from the schedule, or any way that someone makes you feel, not letting that completely take over your experience. And so Maddie Marsh said on our very first day in orientation, "You're not here to win the crown, you're here to win the experience." And that completely resonated with how I was feeling going into that week. Because weeks prior, I had been working on my mindset. I had been working on exactly what I wanted to take away from the competition that had nothing to do with winning a crown. I was working on my mindset on exactly who I wanted to show the judges who I was in interview, so I could control the interview, right? I know exactly who I want to show them. So no matter what they ask me, I'm going to be able to show them who I am or what my mission is as Miss Ohio, as the next Miss America, no matter what they ask me, right? You're able to control these things. And I think a lot of people think you're not, but you actually are. And all of that has to do with your mindset. And someone said, I don't remember, it was at one of a convention that I went to, and she said, "Your personality is your personal reality." And I wish I could quote her, but I don't remember who said it. But that quote has resonated with me so much, because truly, I think, your personality is your personal reality. How you approach situations determines what your outcome is going to be like. And so going into Miss America Week, the first thing that I was going to take on, first and foremost, was to approach everybody with kindness. And I did this because I know that in going into a competitive setting, other people might be afraid to approach you, afraid to talk to you, because, they might be intimidated off of what they see on social media, or they might be trying to, compose themselves or like protect their own peace. And so sometimes they're afraid to approach other women and really build those friendships. And so I knew that going in, I was going to be the person that was going to approach everyone with kindness, and to set the tone that I'm here for sisterhood and for the experience. And I'm not trying to, lay this heavy competitive, setting. I want to lose that. And I want this to be a sisterhood experience where we can all experience this together and uplift each other. So going in day one, I wanted to approach everyone with kindness. And that controlled my outcome, because when I approached people with kindness, I received kindness back. And so part of my experience was I had an amazing time getting to know all these wonderful women, building friendships, and making so many memories with them, simply because I approached them with kindness first. And so that was first and foremost. I had such a great experience with the girls, and they were also amazing. My second one was, I have always been, a control freak. I always want to be able to control the situation, control, everything. And I knew going into Miss America week, I could not control 90% of what was going on, whether that was what I was going to be asked in interview, whether that was whether I made top 10, top 5, or even won Miss America. I cannot control that. But what I could control is how much prep I put into the competition, which I did months prior, and also losing that feeling of needing to control and allowing a higher being, or allowing, for me, God, of course, to really direct me throughout that week and to bring me peace. And so, in letting go of my need and my feeling to control everything, I was able to live presently in the moment at every single event, every single day, whether I was on stage or off stage. I was present and I was calm because I knew that I could only control how I approach the situation. I can't control the outcome. And so going into prelims, I was even more calm on stage. I had no nerves going on stage for my prelims, for my interview, even for talent. And I was more nervous for Miss Ohio than I actually was for Miss America. And that's because I focused more on my mindset competing for Miss America, because I knew that I didn't want my nerves to get in the way of me performing the best way that I possibly could. And I also didn't want to go in thinking, I have to make the top 10, I have to make the top 5. I wanted to completely let go of all these, like, almost like shackles that were holding me back from actually enjoying the experience. And in doing that, I was able to be very calm, center myself, and fully be present on stage, which allowed me to perform better, I think. But my favorite memory of all time, and I think you're gonna love this, is on prelim night, right before we competed. A couple girls that were on my side in the wings, we were like, okay, let's hold hands and let's pray. And so we bowed our heads and closed our eyes and we started praying. And each of us, I think it was like 4 of us, kind of said a little something. And while we were praying, I could like feel hands on my shoulders and I was like, okay, more people are joining, but I didn't know exactly how many. And when I opened my eyes, it started off with like 4 girls. And when I opened my eyes, it was like 25, maybe 30 girls surrounding us in the prayer circle. And it was so beautiful. I was like trying not to cry because we were about to go on stage. We were literally in the wings, about to go on stage and do our opening number. And we were like, no, we need to make time to pray for each other. And we prayed over our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, the words that were coming out of our mouth on stage, to guide our hand movements and our feet movements while we did the opening number because we were all really nervous about messing it up. And praying, just having that moment with the girls backstage, allowed an immense feeling of peace to wash over me. And immediately after we did that, and we were able to bond and pray for each other, not just for ourselves, but for each other, I felt like it wasn't me competing against 51 other women. It was 52 women going on stage and showing the nation how we can represent ourselves and we can represent our state in the best way possible. And it was up to the judges to pick who they want to represent Miss America, but it was up to us to represent ourselves and our state, not to compete against each other and not to, try to one up each other in the process. And so that was my all-time favorite memory of the whole week. I mean, it was truly an incredible week and I have so many other fun memories, but that one was a game changer because it completely changed how I perceived preliminary competition, and it allowed me to have so much more fun competing because I knew that I was uplifting other women in the process and other women were uplifting me as well. We were always hyping each other backstage, praying over each other, helping each other, complimenting each other. It was just a really, really great environment of supportive women. And I think that's what made my experience so amazing, truly.
Amazing. I love that so much. Okay, final question, landing the plane here. So, what's next for you throughout the rest of your year as Miss Ohio, but also with your CSI, with everything from schooling to career? Why don't you just kind of tell us how we can continue to connect with you and what to expect for the near future?
Yeah, so I have some really exciting things coming up. And actually, a lot of these things I got notified of them during Miss America week. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Even if I don't leave with the crown, I have so many things to look forward to. Halfway through the week, actually, on the day of preliminary rehearsal, I got a phone call from the first doctor that I worked under when I was 16. And he called me to let me know that the research that I started with them just got published, and so I am now a double science research author. And the other work that I had just recently got published, I'm going to be presenting at a national conference in Colorado at the end of this month. So that's what I'm preparing for right now on February 1st. So I guess the beginning of next month. But on February 1st, I'll be flying out to Colorado and presenting fetal maternal medicine research that I've been working on for the past year. So that's really exciting. And after that, I have a couple of really exciting events that I'm looking forward to. I'm going to be an ambassador for Goodwill to promote sustainable fashion and thrifting for women across the state. So that's very rewarding because the heels that I wore for my evening gown on the Miss America stage were from Goodwill. They were $6. And I posted that during the week and I got a response from them, and we're going to be meeting on how we can partner with each other and promote sustainable fashion. So that's really exciting for me. And then on top of that, I'm going to be a keynote speaker at a Brazilian women's conference, which is incredible. And I also get to speak in Portuguese at this conference, which is going to be really interesting and exciting. I haven't given a public speech in Portuguese before, so I'm a little bit nervous, but it's going to be very exciting, and it's going to bring another level of representation to the table that I've been wanting to bring. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And then on top of that, just some other, really cool events that I get to speak at. I'm going to continue my work with the American Heart Association and help them with their Go Red for Women fashion show coming up in Toledo, Ohio and Dayton, Ohio, and continue my STEM Goes Red campaign with them as well, all the way up until I give my crown to another amazing woman who's going to continue the Miss Ohio legacy.
Absolutely. How can people find you on social media if they want to book you for an appearance?
Yeah, so my social media is Miss America OH and Stephanie Finoti MAO. And if you would like to email me, you can email to book me at booking@missohio.org. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Megan. This has been amazing. I just admire you so much as a person. I think you're incredible. I love the way that you lead your pageant coaching and just lead through life through God. And I think that, He's really given you this amazing platform to change women's lives by helping them, get their own platforms and reach the crown, but more than that, empowering so many women and teaching them to, become the best version of themselves. So I've loved getting to know you and working with you this past year, and I think you're amazing. So thank you for having me on this podcast.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's amazing. And you know what? You are such a wonderful, humble person. And I think that's just why God is so proud of you and it's so easy to elevate people that work super hard and are willing to put themselves, like the Bible says, at the last seat at the table. And then God elevates them to the head of the table. And that's something that I think that you've done so beautifully. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. And we'll see you guys next week.